clause. When offered additional money in exchange for their signature on a non-disclosure clause, they rejected that offer. My goal today is to give committee members and the people of Iowa a better understanding of how the Branstad administration went about laying off these long-time merit employees, who in the Branstad administration offered the hush money to keep them quiet, and what information the Branstad administration hoped to keep hidden from Iowans by providing hush money payments. Our guests today are Ken Thornton, Carol Frank, Tony Schmidt, and we also have Dean Ibsen, who is joining us via conference call. Dean now lives in Ohio.
Hello.
Thanks, Dean. Committee members, our meeting is scheduled to run from 11 to 1 p.m. We will start with testimony from our 4 guests, and then we'll open it up to questions. On behalf of the Senate Government Oversight Committee, I want to thank each of you for coming and sharing your story with us today. Ken, can we start with you?
Sure. Would you like me just to kind of tell my story? As long as the light's on. Would you like to just kind of need to tell my story?
Yes, please.
My story is a little bit different than the others. My position at the state of Iowa was an administrative position. I was the administrator of operations and design services for the Capitol complex. So if you have your handout that I gave you, my PDQ, what my job is in your handout. So I was responsible for making sure that basically heat and lights were on in the Capitol complex, down to electrical distribution. And then I also did all the projects on the Capitol complex, including the Capitol restoration. I was the person for GSE who accepted those projects and who actually kept track of those projects. So if you take a look at this other handout that I gave you, there's a job list here. And everything that says inside, I was in charge of. That's $44 million worth of work on the Capitol complex. I also had about 30 direct reports, including engineers, architects. And I was in charge of 4 budgets. The budgets were utilities, Capitol complex operations, vertical infrastructure, Ankeny Labs operation, and we had another budget actually that for the Old Mercy Capitol building that I took care of also. So that was my job on the Capitol complex. And I was also part of the executive committee. So the executive committee was made up of administrators, including Dean, that were called upon by the COO, Doug Woodley, and or Mike Carroll for their input in regards to what was going on in the Capitol complex. The story is a little bit interesting because when Director Carroll and COO Woodley took over, I don't know that I ever had a conference with either one of those folks to tell me what management direction that we were taking. So there was no direction, no plan, and I know that Director Carroll presented a plan, sort of a reorganization plan, but he didn't inform his staff, me, and Dean can speak for himself, but you know, we really didn't know where we were going, what we were doing. We just kind of tried to help and blend in. The other thing is, Mr. Woodley, I was never so talked to so disrespectfully, and he alleged many things that I did that I did not do, horrible things. And I sat down and had a conference with him about, you know, what I did we get off to a wrong start. You know, I had a pretty poignant conversation with him, and I got no answer from Mr. Woodley. But he was definitely, I remember one time I went into his office, and this is why I remember this. He has a whiteboard in his office, and it goes around to a set of windows that look out on the Capitol complex. And he had writing, like a flow chart, all the way around and clear out into the windows. And then, you know, I saw my name crossed out several times, and other names there. I don't remember who they were at that time, but this was far before the time that all this started to happen. The other thing too is Mr. Woodley actually made me give him my PDQ because he was going to hire another person to replace me. I mean, he just told me that. I'm hiring another person to replace you. I want you to give me your PDQ or write a PDQ. And that's, again, this position description questionnaire, which I did, and it wasn't used because the person they hired was a person named Steve Gross. And Steve was from Principal Financial, who, as you know, Doug had been employed by Principal. And I guess it's my contention that, this fellow was hired as, again, a friend of Doug. And he was really a security manager, and he had nothing to do with what I do. So anyway, Woodley hired this guy. And I worked with Steve for a while, and he seemed to be a nice enough guy, but he just didn't know a lot of stuff. And until the time that Mr. Woodley came one morning and said, "Hey, we're doing a reorganization, and you're gone. You guys are all gone." And he gave me a letter from Director Carroll that said that we had been reorganized. So that's kind of the story, and I'll tell you what I contend in regard to the reorganization. You have another email here with my name on the top of it. And in the email, I'm sorry it's kind of messy, but I couldn't find the original email. These are the administrative rules that I contend that were broken in the termination. The administrative code has a pretty specific manner and format into reorganization. And I don't think that they followed that manner or format. And certainly that Mr. Groves was only there for 3 months, so he would have been still in probationary period. And the merit employment system allows that probationary employees should go first on a layoff or a reorganization before another person with 8 years goes. So that's a code that's in here. This layoff or this reorganization was not posted to my knowledge. There's retention points that an employee is supposed to have. Retention points are points that you get for years of service. And I don't know if there's any other way to get points, but obviously there's another guy there that was supposed to be doing my job. He would have had no points, and I would have had 8 points, for example, for 8 years employment. So that was all ignored also. So this all bothered me like a lot. I've never been laid off in my life, and it's kind of luck because I'm not saying there's anything bad about people getting laid off. Sometimes businesses change and things happen, but this I don't believe was a regular layoff or reorganization. I believe it had political motivations. I'm about as non-political person as you can get. I just tried to do my job, protect the citizens of the state of Iowa and the Capitol complex, and protect you all and make sure that it's safe here. That's my job, and I don't really like politics. And I know politics are necessary, and obviously I'm not political. I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair. But in here, one of the things that the Carroll administration tried to do is after we were let go, you'll see there's an administrative code in here that's been marked up. The markups are this part about merit employment that they tried to take to the Administrative Rules Committee and get stricken. So that's in here. The other sort of major problem I have is Mr. Schmitz and I were assigned the DPS building on the corner of 7th and 7th Court Avenue. So when that building was remodeled and they added an addition to, Tony was the construction manager, and then I came into the picture when the building basically didn't work. It had problems. And Tony and I called the architect and called Hanson Construction down to talk to us on several occasions. And it got to the point where we weren't getting anywhere. It just wasn't getting done, wasn't getting fixed. So I called their bonding company. That's a normal thing that you would do. If I were if I were a city engineer and there was a problem with a city project, I'd do the same thing. Wouldn't hesitate to do it today. And I'm wondering if that isn't something that, maybe aggravated Mike, because Mr. Carroll, worked for Hanson Construction. I don't know, but I think there's a little bit of retaliation for that in this whole thing.
Do you have more that you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I'm willing to ask
All right.
or answer questions.
Sounds
I'm sorry.
good. Well, let's leave it there and we'll go on to Tony next.
Hello. My name is Tony Schmitz. I work in the Architectural and Engineering Services Department underneath GSE for about 5 years, a little longer, I believe. We all got laid off September 1st, as you know. We were laid off at 8 o'clock in the morning with no notice, told to go home, would be paid for 20 days. And I believe that's in the administrative rules, so you get 20 days of pay. I believe they can keep you on staff and or send you home. They sent us home, which I thought was a little odd. I was probably managing $15 million worth of construction projects myself. The rest of the project managers, I'm just going to speculate, $150 million worth of construction projects. Told us all to go home. Just leave, don't come back. Willing to pay us for the 20 days, but go home. Well, I hung around. I had a lot of stuff to clean up, as you can imagine, as all you have jobs or did have jobs at one time. I was there at 11 o'clock still that day. Three replacements. They had replacements there. So I want to say there were 7 project managers that took care of the state construction projects. Might have been 8. They had 3 people there to replace us that day at 11 o'clock. We were let go at 8. I ran into these people that replaced me at 11 o'clock. After further investigation, I did several open records requests. Comes to find out, so I have emails from the DAS administration. They were scheming us back in July, talking to these 3 individuals via email to replace us through August. So these positions were not advertised. These people were selected by the DAS administration. And further come to find out, they changed the position description, of course, so they can call it a layoff. But I have all these individuals' resumes because again, I did an open record request. They have no different background than I had. They're all construction-related backgrounds. They have no different background than any of us that got laid off. So on top of all this, the first day these people walked in the door, they were making more money than any of us. The first day. They were at the maximum pay grade of their salary. I do know in the administrative code there's rules and regulations in regards to advertising positions, so you don't have, what was the term? The good old boys club, I believe. There's a reason why HR does what they do. So they paid us out 20 days. They paid the new people coming in more money than any of us were making. And then they turned around and paid us settlements. How is that saving the taxpayers money? The way it should have been done, per the administrative rules, the way I interpret them anyway, was like Ken was leading to, there's a retention point system. If they wanted to reduce staff, I understand a layoff. That's what businesses do. They had every reason to do that, but they surely would have kept on at least a few of us individuals to manage the projects that were going on. They wouldn't have had the payouts. They wouldn't be paying us more money. They would have had all that historical knowledge that we all had from all the. Can you imagine if any one of you were going from your positions right now, go home? You guys have a lot of knowledge for everything you've done here. Some of you probably 20 years. So when they claim it was a reorganization, yeah, it was reorganized, no doubt about it, but it wasn't in the best interest of the taxpayer by any stretch. So that's the reason I fought my layoff. I fought my layoff to get my job back because I didn't feel they followed the administrative rules. And that process took a long time, and obviously I had to find other work. So I had already had another position at that time, and so I took the money instead of taking my job back, which I wouldn't have been able to work under this administration anyway because obviously what they did to me. So that's all I got. Unless you have other questions, comment directly.
We will have